For this series of videos which I want to put together on YouTube, I want to go a little bit more in depth with my images and talk to you about some of the ideas behind them, some of the ideas behind the editing and some of the feelings and things which I had out in the field, and both when putting the images together at the final processing stage. I'm going to draw those images from my 2023 portfolio, which can be found on my Instagram feed if you want to look ahead, and it's also up on my website. I'm also going to use my YouTube videos as some source for that information so I can share with you again what happened out in the field. As we're approaching autumn, I thought it would be a good idea to pick up on an autumn image, one of my all-time favourites, and share that with you. So before I go into more depth about it, I want you to have a look at when I took the image and some of the things that were behind it. So let's get into YouTube and have a look at that.
Well, I found my first photograph. And to be honest, it's been a bit of a, not a long trek, but it's just been a little bit difficult to actually find it. And now that I'm here, I'm really pleased because I've walked past this spot a number of different times during the year, and each time I've come across it, I've known that there's been a real potential here to take some really good images, but I've never really actually stopped and looked through the viewfinder and seen what's possible. And I think because when the seasons change and lighting conditions change and the direction of the sun changes and things, it opens up lots of different possibilities for taking new images. Now you can probably see behind me that it's actually really quite bright, but that's what's making this image possible today, because in the foreground down, if I tip the camera down, you can see that all around me where the camera is, it's a little bit darker, and there's a reflection down on the water, that sort of like highlight leading you down into this brightness. And that's what the image is about. That's what sort of captured my eye and what I wanted to share with you. It's that stream of light sort of taking you down into this bright area beyond. So I've tried to frame the image up with some darker sort of trees and the banks along the stream to the left and to the right. And there's a canopy of trees, a dark branch over the top, which I've also, sorry, Ruby's distracted by something. And there's a canopy over the top of the trees, which is also quite interesting, and it sort of holds your eye in. I've got to be a little bit careful because if I go a bit too high, I'm going to take some of that bright sky into the scene. And if anything draws your eye to the edges of the frame, if there's any bright areas that attract your eye out away from the main picture that I'm trying to produce, it will destroy the effect. But I've got a lot of hope for this image. I'm really quite excited about taking it. So I'm going to set up the composition and see how we get on. So I've actually set the camera up with the polarizing filter on, because it's that polarizing filter that just takes some of the reflection out. And I don't want to destroy all of it because, like I said, it's all about the that highlight sort of taking your eye through the picture. But what I do want to do is I want enough highlight taken out so that it doesn't overpower the image and I can control the exposure. Now I'll put up on the screen the video that I'm shooting through the 5D as I'm setting up my composition, so you can just see what it is I'm looking at. So you see in the picture at the moment that there's some rocks down in the center of the frame, and those rocks are really sort of my foreground anchor point, and it's something to start your journey through the picture. Now you can see that there's a number of trees to the left and to the right of the picture, and these, albeit really good, are a little bit too dominant. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and crop those out. And I don't want so much of the bank, and I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but you certainly don't want Ruby in there either. So I've decided to zoom in to about this sort of position, and I've left some of the trees on the back, on the sides there. But you know, even in post-processing, I may even take those out a little bit more and just get rid of them completely. But what I do want to have at the top is just this dark bit of tree at the top, because it's important I have that so that it frames the center of the image. Hopefully now you can see the effect that I'm looking for and what I'm trying to capture. So all I need to do is take this final image, put it back into camera mode, back into live view, focus on that rock, 2-second timer, there we go, take the picture.
Before we go into the purpose of the editing that I did on this image, I just want to reiterate a few points from that video. And it's important to remember what you did out in the field. It's important to understand what the purpose was and the idea behind taking your pictures, because that's always going to be your starting point for editing a successful landscape photography image. If you remember from the video that we just watched, it's about this light, the way that it shimmers on the top of the water, and that almost there's an S-curve that sort of takes you down through into the scene behind. There's a break in the trees in the background where there's some light coming through. There's some great autumnal colours, and so a chance to introduce some framing above and around the sides and maybe underneath as well. And when we edit the photograph, it's these elements which we really need to draw out. Right, let's have a look at the editing. What I want to do with my editing is simply enhance the parts in the scene that I want to share with you, or I want to capture for myself and for my own enjoyment later on. So the whole point, like I said before, for me editing the image is to enhance what is already there. So when we take a look at this image that we've got in front of me right now, the first thing you'll probably realise is that compared to what I showed at the end of the video, it hasn't got that warmth about it. Now I've had to do a little bit of a cheat for this edit for you, just to bring up exactly the way that I wanted to do it. And the reason I've done that is I wanted to adjust the colours really quickly. And incidentally, in this video, this isn't so much about me pulling the sliders left and right. It's about getting a little bit deeper and the thought process and the reasons behind why I edit the way that I do. So let's have a quick look at this. The first thing I did is edited the colour temperature. And I simply done that by increasing the temperature up from wherever it was naturally shot up to about 9,673 Kelvin up there. And that's just brought that warmth out as well. I've also done the same down here in the colour grading with the highlights, where I've boosted the colour up just in the highlight area ever so slightly, just to draw out some of the colours in the water. It just adds that more autumnal feel to them. So that takes care of the colours. I talked about the tunnel effect in the field and the way that I like these trees sort of framing the outside of the image and the outside of the area. But I also wanted the edges to look relatively clean. And when I looked at them on the computer screen, it looks to me that these areas over here where we've got the trees and the branches and the gaps, it doesn't frame it strongly enough for me. It just adds little bits of space, little bits of confusion in the background, and branches coming in and out of the frame. The things that I call areas of tension that I wanted to crop out. So I've brought the sides of that image in ever so slightly on the crop just to bring that in so it's there. Now you may remember that when I originally edited this image, what was important to me was making sure that whatever I did enhanced what was out in the field. And there's some other bits and pieces that I've done to it to actually enable that to happen. What I've done is I've added a couple of layer masks, and those masks work to strengthen the viewer's eye looking into the scene. Now you'll see this edit is in fact incredibly simple, and that's how I like to keep my edits. If you remember, what I wanted the viewer to do was to look into the scene along these highlights on the river and take your eye down in towards the background. And when you get to that background, I want you to look through this area here where the mouse is now. I want you to look into that scene behind. Now there's not a lot there, but there's just a hint of a woodland in the background as well. And there's some things we can do which look really natural to help the viewer do that. The first thing I've done is I've added a vignette around the outside of the edge of the image. Now I don't overdo it, I try and naturally match what is there. So once again, I've only wanted to enhance the edges of these trees, the bank, the dark shadow areas, and the top of these trees up here as well, where they already framed the image. The next thing I've done is to add a little bit of lightning to this part of the photograph, because then that just draws you that way. You follow the river down to that direction, and to stop you from just stopping here and diving out the right hand end of the frame and having nowhere to go, I pull your attention back into this area. So the process of making photographs and working out how you're going to finally present your images out in the field doesn't only make it easier, it also makes it more rewarding. I got a lot of enjoyment from making this photograph from the end-to-end process. Have a look at the final image. I also made this photograph during the same shoot. If you want to watch the full video and see me produce both images, then check out this video next.